Welcome back to another episode of Temasek. It's been a long while since I've uploaded an episode since I brought the series back from the dead. Work has been really busy and the process of editing these videos take longer than the build itself. And I don't particularly enjoy the process of recording voiceovers, so I'm still trying to refine the process. In today's mega build, we are building so many areas in the map. So my development style for this series is to be building across time, so I do want to build in a more natural manner. So not whole towns at one go, but there will be simultaneous builds across the entire map of Temasek. So today's episode may seem a little bit scattered because there's so much groundwork to be done. So with this episode, we will see 2 towns being built, and with future episodes, we will see more new towns being built as well. And the main thing is that we are setting up for the future, and that is always a key part of the job of an urban planner. And in this series, I play that role, so I decide how the city grows over time. This episode was recorded way before the Airports DLC was released, and I really struggled to get the game back up and running after the patch was released. Maybe because the save game is really old, but I had so many deprecated and buggy mods that I really had to remove before I could even start the game again. And not only that, I installed the Networks Extension 3 mod by mistake, and that caused even more bugs for me. I still can't believe that someone would try to target the Cities Skylines community like that, and that's crazy. So however, after getting the game back and running, I realized that I lost some of the procedural objects that I built in the game, so you might notice some differences in the next episode of the series. So let's talk about some of the things that we've been building so far. So today we are working on building some of the old areas in the north, mainly the kampongs and the villages that exist in the countryside. So these villages existed since the early 1900s, and gradually towns were built around or over them. So during the period of lightning growth in Temasek, many kampongs around the country were demolished and new towns were built over them. So today's episode will show some of these new towns that were built, as well as the kampongs that survived the urban renewal and slum clearance that happened in the 80s and before. So much of today's episode will be built in the northern side of the country, where I currently stay. So in the previous iteration of the series, I never got to my own hometown, which I was a little disappointed about. Hence we're starting the series by already building around the country, and that meant that I had to lay the groundwork for many towns and districts today in this episode. So like in real life, we don't build completed towns and villages in one go, and so the common theme across the rest of the series will be very incomplete areas and towns. So what we've built so far is an area that I have taken inspiration from the houses that sit along Thompson Road. So these are old areas of bungalows and some condominiums as well. As you can see on screen, I've built also a little bit of like a HDB estate kind of thing, and some old-fashioned condos with those tower blocks. Okay, next up we are building some heritage roads that have existed for a long period of time. And as we go along in the series, we will come back and realign some of these roads and straighten them to provide higher capacity when we do need them. But for now, I'm just laying the groundwork for the other villages that will sit around this area. So this village that I'm building here is called Tengah Village. In Malay, Tengah means middle, if I'm not wrong. And this village is in the middle of nowhere right now, but in the future this will be a new town that will sit across the river from the other towns that we are going to be building today. So in the future, I'm definitely going to be building a HDB estate, a new town around this area, so stay tuned for that. And right now we are building my hometown, so this is Woodlands New Town, and we are starting work on some HDB blocks, and this will form a little neighborhood. And so this is a very common typology of housing development board buildings from the late 80s. So before, HDBs were built with multi-story car parks. Car parks used to be in open air spaces below each block, and so you will see that reflected in today's build. And something that I noticed about Woodlands blocks is that there will be this little roundabout that sits at the end of each car park, and so that's what I am doing here. So in Singapore, you can also see that HDBs tend to have this checkerboard pattern as described by HDB. And what this means is that there will be buildings of different heights in each neighborhood like this. And then you will see that buildings are kind of layered like a checkerboard, I guess. And so this is to allow natural ventilation through these HDB areas. And yeah, so as you can see, I'm putting in some of these taller buildings as well as some shorter buildings. I'm still trying to figure out where to place those buildings because I do want it to look as realistic as possible. So right now I am building the town park that sits next to the checkpoint, and this is inspired by Woodlands Town Garden, which also sits next to the checkpoint and also has a lake in the middle, which is what I'm building now. So even though this park is quite chill and relaxed right now, it used to be known for its seedy lifestyle because this is where transgender prostitutes will solicit for clients in the car park. And you know, they will go into the cars or into the bushes for whatever they want to do. But since then, the town park has been upgraded and the whole area is very clean now, I guess. But I don't know, never been there at night, so I would never know. So even though what I'm building now is inspired by what happens in real life, I don't want to build direct copies because that's not the kind of thing I want to do. But I hope that I am able to create recognizable streetscapes that are very clearly inspired by Singapore. So I don't know, if you can tell that it's Singapore, just let me know because that would make my day. So one thing that I'm trying to do is to not plant too densely. I think one of the things that I tend to try to do is to really plant a lot of trees, and that looks fine when it's not a manicured area, but when it comes to a park, I realized that, you know, I need to place down less trees. So over here, I'm only trying to line trees along the running paths and along the border of the park, and to create like little like fields where people can sit around and relax and have picnics like in real life. So I don't know whether I've achieved that, but I think the park looks pretty good. So I'm deviating a little bit from reality here. This is gonna be an area that I would call Marsiling. It's a little bit different from real life, of course. And in this area, I want it to be a bit more transit oriented and a bit more pedestrian oriented even. Even though most of Singapore is quite transit oriented already, I wanted this area to be more like pedestrian malls and all that. So right now I am building the metro network in the north. Unfortunately, this is not how the network was built in Singapore, because the southern part of the line was built first, of course, to connect downtown with the nearer areas, and the north part only received the red line or the north-south line in, I think, the late 90s or early 2000s. So we will be starting work on the downtown very soon, but before we do so, I did want to connect or at least build the metro network first, because after all, the towns in the north were built with the metro network in mind. So once we start building the downtown, then I can start linking up the north to the south, and so that forms the north-south line. And the north-south line is kind of unique here in Singapore or in Temasek as well, because it makes a U-turn in the north and it will serve the northwestern area as well as the northeastern area all the way down to the south. And so I want to emulate that in my version of the line. So you will see in the future that the line connects from the southern area of the downtown through the middle central area of the city up to the north, and then it makes a U-turn and then heads down to the western interchange where it will connect up with the other line, the east-west line. and then the other terminus will be in the downtown. So over here I am starting to run the metro line through the industrial estate that I built a long time ago. And because I did not really build this with the metro line in mind, I am currently struggling to squeeze in the line, but you know what, I think I've managed to make it work. Anyway, it is very common to see the metro run in the median of the roads in Singapore, so I think this looks pretty okay. Unfortunately, I don't really have an asset that I like that will sit in the median of the road, so the station just has to sit by the side of the road. So, and that's what I've done so far for Woodlands Town, and we will come back to Woodlands in the future, maybe when I'm building the 90s with the whole different type of HDBs available then. Okay, here we are in the eastern area of the city. So this area is also inspired by the east of Singapore. So the old town would follow some of the roads that lead into the east side. So this area also includes a huge heritage area. So shop houses that are in this space will be conserved for the benefit of the future generations. So right now the shop houses are very creatively used by offices, cafes, startups, as well as for residential use. So this whole entire area is starting to feel a little bit gentrified by the younger Singaporeans, as well as the foreign workers or the expats that have moved to Singapore in search of a better life. So finally, we are now building the meat of the episode. So this is Woodlands New Town. So the term New Town is actually a term used by Housing Development Board to refer to a self-sufficient residential area. So it's also referred to as a satellite town. So this area will have jobs, healthcare, entertainment, everything that you need actually to live well. And all of that will be in one district that is connected to the downtown by public transport. So essentially this is like a high density transit-oriented development. So I guess Singapore has been building TODs since the early 80s. So it's really no wonder that 80% of the population ride the public transport to work. And of course it's also because cars are extremely prohibitively expensive here. So I guess we don't really have a choice. Luckily for us, the MRT network is pretty substantial and pretty useful. So, you know, no complaints by half of us, most of us, I don't know. So this line is also on its way along to the western end of the north-south line. So as you can see, I've already built the station and it's on this hill, so that's kind of annoying. But I'm envisioning that there is some sort of connectivity within the buildings here that you see. So it's like, I don't know, escalators and stuff to the bottom of the hill. But yeah, that's what I have so far. One thing unique about the Woodlands New Town in Singapore, as well as in Temasek, is that it has a LRT line. So in Singapore, it's called LRT, Light Rapid Transport, but technically it's more like a people mover because it only holds quite a much smaller capacity compared to an LRT line. And it's really more like a people mover. So a real LRT line would probably be like Circle Line. So these LRTs are elevated in Singapore and they only run 1 or 2 car trains and they run around the town on a viaduct. However, in Temasek, this line will run across the river to serve the future towns that will be built in other episodes. And we are probably going to be using 3 car trains because I really don't want to use the people mover assets because I think it looks kind of funny. So we are still building in the same late 80s era, so all these HDBs will still come with open air car parks. And I was really struggling with the terrain, let's be real, it's a bit steep. But I managed to fix it, or I managed to make it look a bit more realistic using the Node controller, which has been really, really helpful. It's an amazing mod. In a new town like this, there are always community facilities. So right now, I am building a swimming complex for the citizens to visit. So this is like a sports park area. So there will be tennis courts as well as other recreational facilities for the citizens. I'm also building a park next to it, but I don't remember whether I actually recorded any footage of it. So let's just assume that it is recorded, and you will see it in the cinematics after this segment. So this area is built right next to the MRT, so I guess the Sims will be able to access this on foot. And I don't know, I put in a few of those like people generators so that it will help this area get a bit more bustling and lively, because I mean all these are props, so they don't really attract much people, I guess. I am also planning on adding like buses to run around the town and to connect this town to other towns in the area, especially those areas that are not connected by the MRT. So I'll probably do that in a future episode, because I don't think I really have much to connect to right now at this moment. So I guess this part of the town was built before land became a major concern, or rather the lack of land was a major concern, because I've been going quite liberal with the open air car parks, and you will see that in the older towns in Singapore, whereas right now everything that is built, it's always underground car parks, or it's always gonna be multi-story car parks, and I guess that's what happens when you are in Singapore and we don't have land. And yeah, so these are like the tennis courts that will exist in this area. I was a little lazy to design my own custom one, and this fit a little bit perfectly, kind of perfectly. So I guess I decided to just go with this little park area, and right across that dirt road will be where the central park of the city. Oh wait, no, it's right there underneath the train tracks. So that's going to be the central park of this town. And one more build for Kang. Right now I am building a primary school, so I am using a modular Japanese elementary school building pack to create my own custom school. So in Singapore, most of the roads are not in a great layout, so I am struggling to find assets that will make my city look like Singapore. And so it's a blessing to have modular assets like this that can help me create custom buildings to fit what I'm trying to create. I mean, I still ended up with something looking a little square, but it's part of the aesthetic, yeah? So with this school, there is a main parade square in the middle, so you see that void in between all the buildings. That's where the students go for their flag raising ceremony in the morning, and that's where they'll recite the pledge and sing the national anthem. So this estate is technically not part of Woodlands New Town, rather it sits in an area that used to be occupied by other stuff. So like I envisioned that this would have been like a plot of empty land, and around it would have been other stuff belonging to perhaps another district. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, empty land, and then they decided to build HDBs there, and it's not really part of any town. And now we are moving into the last big build of today's episode. So this here is gonna be Ang Mo Kio New Town, and this area is served by 2 metro stations. So that's Ang Mo Kio and Yio Chu Kang station, which is being placed right now. So the name Ang Mo Kio has quite unclear origins. People don't really know why it's called Ang Mo Kio, but most people think that it's because it translates to Red Hair Bridge, and that's in Hokkien. So it's like a white man's bridge because we were colonized, and no idea why, but that's just the origins of the name. So this area is kind of like a pedestrian mall, and that's why I decided to use node controller to make the path a little wider so there's more space for people to walk. And I guess in the past there will be more like illegal vendors and people who would set up shops along the pathways. I think you don't see that as much anymore, but that's what it used to be like. And yeah, so this is a pedestrian mall, so I guess this is very forward-thinking urban planning again. And this area will be linked to the MRT using an underpass, which you won't really get to see. And so you see all these orange buildings, terracotta roofs. These are shop houses, I guess. These are shop houses, and I will be adding in some shops along the pathways for people to shop at and to walk around. There are also hawker centers, kopitiams, and small shopping malls available in real life, but I don't think I managed to create that in this episode, so I might be doing that in the future. So here are some density provided through all these point blocks that sit around the area. So many of all these shops that you can see in all these HDB estates now, with all these pedestrian malls, they tend to be run by older people, and for a reason. So there used to be a lot of informal shops around the area, especially in the kampongs and the villages. And one of the ways the government decided to encourage people to move into HDB blocks is that they promised them that there would be spaces for them to rent and run their shops in. So I guess maybe that's why you tend to see a lot of all these pedestrian malls in older estates. But in the newer estates, you really don't get to see much of it. It's always the same few things. Supermarket chains, and not really, mom and pop shops, mama shops, which is kind of sad because I feel like these shops really give a neighborhood character. And also it's super convenient to be able to buy, whatever you need in a shop downstairs. It's like New York's bodegas, which, are not an original concept. Whatever the New Yorkers say, I don't care. So I guess one key feature of the Ang Mo Kio town is that the buildings are all parallel to each other. So that's why I'm trying to emulate that here as well. So it mostly is because the buildings are trying to avoid too much harsh sunlight into the buildings, so they do face north-south, if I'm not wrong. And you see that around the entirety of Singapore as well. So you will see that a lot of buildings and a lot of HDBs especially all face in the same direction. And so yeah, that's it for today's episode. I think I've gone on for a long time, and I did see a few comments before saying that they wanted to see me build less and also see a little bit more of live play, but I've never really done that before, so I will be experimenting with that. And if you see it in the next episode, then I guess it worked out. So with that, I am ending today's episode right now, and cheers, see you in the next one.